It is our knowledge of the start, the finish, the objective, and the rules of a game that provide us with the freedom to play it and enjoy it in a meaningful way. If you don't have the answers to those 4 fundamental questions, all you can do on the field is pretend and hope no one notices that you have no idea what you're doing or why you're doing it. One thing about me, I've always loved sports. I've always been a lover of sports, but here's a sporting experience I would never want to have. Imagine you're thrown into a game without knowing when it started, when it will finish, what the objective of the game is, or what any of the rules are. Okay, what would you do? You'd probably try to ask some of the players around you the answers to those 4 questions. What if they just carried on playing, looked at you oddly for even asking the question, and were completely uninterested? Well, then you might try to find a coach or a manager. But what if the coach was standing there looking at the chaos on the field because no one knew the answer to these 4 questions? And the coach was just yelling, "Great job, everyone, fantastic, you're all doing great, we've got a first place trophy waiting for all of you." Well, finally, you might try to find a referee or an umpire to give you definitive answers to those 4 questions. What if you found out that the players had gotten frustrated at his calls and sent him home? It is our knowledge of the start, the finish, the objective, and the rules of a game that provide us with the freedom to play it and enjoy it in a meaningful way. If you don't have the answers to those 4 fundamental questions, all you can do on the field is pretend and hope no one notices that you have no idea what you're doing or why you're doing it. Now, sadly, this is not just a game. This is real life. Many people are deeply confused about the answers to those 4 questions, which Ravi mentioned: questions of origin, meaning, morality, and destiny. Where did we come from, the start? Where are we headed? What is the purpose of life? And how should we live in light of it? How many people can say with confidence that they have answers to those questions? How many people, how many of us are pretending our way through life? I think we live in a really difficult time to seek answers to the deepest questions of life. There are many reasons for that, but I think one reason for it is because we've become fearful of truth. It wasn't that long ago that The Economist suggested that we've become a post-truth society. It was around the same time, I think right at the end of 2016, that Oxford English Dictionary made post-truth its word of the year. Our culture is very confused about the truth. There's the truth, and then there's the naked truth. There's the truth, and then there's the gospel truth. But the gospel is taken to be obviously false. There's the honest truth, and then there's the God's honest truth. But that has nothing to do with God. We stretch the truth and bend the truth and twist the truth. We bury the truth because the truth hurts. When we want something to be false, we knock on wood. When we want something to be true, we cross our fingers. Which wooden cross are we trusting in? Why have we become afraid of truth? Lots of reasons for that. But I think one is because experience has taught us that truth leads to disagreement. And the fear is that once you disagree, that is going to start you on a trajectory that leads to the devaluing of the person that you disagree with, and then to intolerance, and then to extremism, and then to violence, and ultimately to terrorism. And if that is the trajectory of truth, if truth starts you down a path that ends in extremism, violence, and terrorism, then truth is an act of war. And an act of war leaves you with only 2 options: fight or flee. Either you fight for truth and become a terrorist in the making, or you flee from truth altogether in the name of love. Truth or love. I think that is the cultural ultimatum that we are stuck in. Jesus refused to make that choice. That is one of the things that I love about him most. He refused to choose between truth and love. I think that's one way to understand the central message of Christianity. In fact, Jesus' ultimate communication of the truth was in and through his very act of sacrificially giving his life for others. In his death, he communicated the truth about who we are, a people in need of saving, and he communicated the truth about who he is, a God loving enough to save. Love and truth perfectly united in a personal sacrifice. That is the gospel. And so I think, therefore, that raises a very challenging question. Who are you giving your life for in order to be able to communicate the truth to them? Let me put it in even starker terms. If the only way for the person sitting next to you to come to know and embrace the truth were for you to die, would you be willing to give your life for them? Jesus came down and he sat down next to us. And he knew that the only way for us to come to know the truth was for him to die. And he accepted that cost. He thought it was worth it for you and for me. For those of us who are Christians, the truth of our message will not be persuasive until we love others enough to be willing to give our lives for them, as Jesus gave his life for us. It means apologetics is not about fighting and it's not about fleeing. I'm not willing to flee from the fundamental questions of life. Too much is at stake. But I'm also not interested in fighting to win a philosophical debate just for the sake of it. What I want to do is figure out what questions every person in the world needs to answer in order to live a coherent and captivating life, and then invite them on a journey to explore those questions together, probably and hopefully in a way that unites us rather than divides us. Origin, meaning, morality, and destiny. The four fundamental questions. Let's start with origin. Where did we all come from? For a long time, my assumption was that Christianity offered the crazy answer to that question. And then science offered the sober, sensible, rational answer to that question. I've changed my mind about this, and here's why. Consider big picture explanations of the universe. How did all of this get here? There are only three primary options. Option number one, God created it. Now, I might, as a Christian, just put my hand up and say, that is absolutely extraordinary. That is an incredible, remarkable option. But criticism without alternative is empty. What are the alternatives? Option number two, the universe just popped into existence from nothing for no reason whatsoever. That, too, is an absolutely remarkable option. The stuff in our everyday lives doesn't generally just pop in and out of existence. If it doesn't now, why should I think that it did at the beginning? Or a third option, the universe, or perhaps some series of universes, has just always existed, extending infinitely back in time, but again, with no explanation for why it has done so. Now, perhaps we can explain each part of the universe with a part that came before it, but we still have absolutely no explanation for why this enormous, intricate universe exists at all. I call these three options the normalcy of the supernatural. These are the only three relevant alternatives, and all three of them are utterly remarkable. All three of them are utterly extraordinary, utterly beyond the realm of the ordinary. And even if you decide, you know what, I'm going to remain agnostic, I can see that these three options are all pretty miraculous and extraordinary and crazy and remarkable, so I'm not going to commit myself to any of them. Well, you're still logically committed to one of those three things being true. And even that in itself is just as remarkable. The conclusion, I think, is that we live in a miraculous world. It doesn't matter whether you're an atheist, a theist, or an agnostic. I don't think anyone can get around that fact. Everyone is committed to believing in something extraordinary. Christians believe that Jesus, as God himself, was miraculously born of a virgin. Now again, I might just put my hand up and say that is an absolutely remarkable, extraordinary, miraculous fact. But what are the alternatives? Take the brilliant Cambridge physicist Stephen Hawking's attempt to come up with an atheistic birth of the universe. Here's what he says. He says the universe can and will create itself from nothing. Spontaneous creation is the reason there is something rather than nothing, why the universe exists, why we exist. Is that any less miraculous of a birth than the virgin birth of Jesus? That sounds a lot like a virgin birth to me. Or take the prominent atheist philosopher Quentin Smith. This is a scholar with over 12 books and over 150 peer-reviewed articles to his name. And here's how he accounts for the origin of the universe. He says, the fact of the matter is that the most reasonable belief is that we came from nothing, by nothing, and for nothing. We should acknowledge our foundation in nothingness and feel awe at the marvelous fact that we have a chance to participate briefly in this incredible sunburst that interrupts without reason the reign of non-being. That definitely sounds like a virgin birth. Again, I think we're led to the same conclusion. We live in a miraculous world, and there is no getting around that fact. It's not a matter of whether we believe in a virgin birth. It's just a matter of which virgin birth we choose to accept. We can believe in the virgin birth of an atheistic universe that is indifferent to us, a universe where there is at bottom no design, no purpose, no evil, and no good, nothing but blind, pitiless indifference, as Richard Dawkins has put it. Or we can believe in the virgin birth of a God who loves us so deeply that he came to be born among us, to call us friends, to call us family. The exact opposite of blind, pitiless indifference. Someone who is not blind to anything about you and yet loves you. Someone who knows you in absolute full and yet loves you in full. What an incredible gift. Origin. Morality. Most people believe in morality. Most people believe it's a real thing. We believe that some things are good and some things are bad and some things are right and some things are wrong. We believe that all people should be treated with dignity and respect and fairness. We hold it to be self-evident that all people are created equal. At the foundation of this morality that we all believe in and that we're all grasping for is the belief that all people are equally valuable. But for all people to be equally valuable, there has to be something about all people, every single person, that is equally true. For all people to be equally valuable, there has to be something about everyone that is equally true of every single person. Here's my question, what is it? What is the thing that is equally true of every single one of us and can never change and therefore can ground the equal value of every single person and therefore can ground any plausible morality? It is surprisingly difficult to answer that question from a naturalistic perspective. All of our natural endowments are distributed along a spectrum. Some people are less intelligent than others, less happy than others, less healthy than others, less wealthy, less useful for society, less good-looking, less capable of passing on their genes. And all of these things change over time. So what is equally true of every single person and completely unchanging? Only one thing, the love of God. And not just any God. There are plenty of gods, supposed gods out there who say, I will love you if you're good enough, or I will love you if you believe in me. No, I'm talking about the extravagant, unconditional, no ifs love of the Christian God that is for every single person and that cannot be earned and cannot be lost. Christians call it grace, unmerited love. Early on in our dating relationship, there was a moment in which Jo turned to me and she said, Vince, I don't deserve you. And for some reason I responded, no, you don't. Not recommended. Thankfully, I didn't stop there. I continued. I said, no, you don't, and I don't deserve you either. Isn't it wonderful? How could we ever deserve another person as our very own? I mean, surely that's beyond what any one of us could ever deserve. Love at its best is not about what we earn or merit or deserve. It is about grace. And I like that type of love. That's the type of love that means you don't always have to be looking over your shoulder or around the corner worrying that someone more worthy of love than you is going to come along and take your place. It's a love that is secure. And therefore, it's a love that you can stop competing for and just enjoy. I wonder what the instinctual answer of your heart would be to that question. Do you compete for love? Or do you just enjoy it, knowing the stability of that love because of the God that you worship? What if even before the foundation of the world, God loved every one of us with grace, with love that is a gift, with love that cannot be lost, with love that cannot be earned and cannot be lost, with love which is exactly the same on your best day and on your very worst day. The love of a parent that sees a son still far off, it says in Luke 15, on the horizon. A son who demanded his inheritance early and ran off and did everything you're not supposed to do, did everything wrong. And yet this father sees the son still far off on the horizon, and he hikes up his robe, he exposes his legs, it would have been shameful to do in that culture, and he takes off running like an embarrassing fool after his son. I've often thought what the son thought was going to happen as he saw his father running towards him. In fact, the son would have known that what was supposed to happen to a Jewish boy who lost his inheritance to foreigners was that he was supposed to be surrounded by the village, and they were supposed to yell at him and say, "You are cut off from your people." Instead, and Jesus tells this story as a picture of the father's love, this father, just as an embarrassing fool, just sprints towards his son, throws himself on his son, gives his son sandals, gives him the best robe. It would have been the father's own robe, gives him a ring, probably a signet ring, saying, "You have the authority of the family again." And then he yells back and says, "Kill the best animal that we have. We're throwing the biggest party you've ever seen." What if God loves us like that? What if he loves us with grace, which is exactly the same for every single person on this planet, and there is absolutely nothing that we can do to earn it, and there is absolutely nothing we can do to lose it. Love that's not to be earned, but simply to be returned. That you are loved by God is the one and only thing about you that could never change. That is why it gives you your identity, and that is why only God can ground the equal value of every single person, which is at the foundation of any plausible morality. Origin, morality, meaning. 2 years ago, I was part of a week of events, and at one point we had a big whiteboard outside, and across the whiteboard it said, "What is the meaning of life?" And then there were different options that you could choose, that you could vote on across the top. And the options were things like personal success, to find love, no meaning to life, to pass on your genes, to have power and influence, to achieve your goals. And students would confidently walk up to this whiteboard, and they would pick up the marker, and they would look at it, and then they would stand there, paralyzed, often for minutes on end. They had no idea how to answer the question. And I could hear the Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl in my head. People have enough to live by, but nothing to live for. They have the means, but no meaning. People have enough to live by, but nothing to live for. They have the means, but no meaning. What is the meaning of life? What does it mean for something to have meaning? Does this collection of letters have meaning? Well, it depends. It depends on whether that is a word. It depends on whether someone intentionally put those letters side by side in order to communicate something, or whether it's just a random collection of letters. Meaning relies on intelligence and intentionality. My baby niece Camille's first word was "dada." And my brother, pictured here, he was so proud. And then I walked into the room, and Camille said, "Dad, dad, dad, dad." And then the cat walked into the room, and Camille said, "Dad, dad, dad, dad." And then a cockroach walked into the room, and Camille said, "Dad, dad, dad, dad." And then my brother was no longer proud. Randomness is the enemy of meaning. Even if something appears to have meaning, it might not if it was not intentional. Even if something looks meaningful, it's only actually meaningful if it is the result of the intention of an intelligent being. Was our universe intended? Over the last 35 years, what's called the fine-tuning argument has strongly suggested that it was. Here's how. The universe that we live in, it could have taken many different forms. And scientists have come to a consensus, not just Christian scientists, but scientists in general, that there are dozens of fundamental features of the universe that needed to be precisely the way they are for life to be possible. Not just life on the planet Earth, not just life as we know it, but any form of life anywhere in the universe. Let's take just one example. If the explosive force of the initial expansion of the universe had been different in 1 part in 10 to the 60th, no life would have been possible. In other words, the percentage difference that you could have while still accommodating the possibility of life is a 0 followed by a period followed by 57 zeros followed by a 1. If the initial expansion had been even just the slightest bit weaker, gravity would have made the universe collapse back in on itself almost immediately, far too quickly for any form of life to develop. If the initial expansion had been just the slightest bit stronger, the universe literally would have dispersed into thin air. Particles would have wound up so quickly, so far from each other, that all you could have gotten would have been cold, simple molecules, nothing like the sort of complex chemistry that's required for any form of life. Sir Roger Penrose, emeritus professor at Oxford, one of the world's leading mathematical physicists, he estimates that the overall difference you could have, if you take into account all the fundamental features that needed to have this precision, the overall difference you could have is less than 1 part in 10, raised in turn to the power of 10, raised in turn again to the power of 123. I would write that out as a percentage for you, but even if I could turn all the matter in the universe into paper, I would still have far too little paper to print the required number of zeros. In fact, I would need more zeros than there are particles in the universe. Sir Fred Hoyle, the Cambridge astronomer, one of the 20th century's most significant scientific thinkers, he compared the random emergence of even the simplest cell to the likelihood of a tornado blowing through a junkyard and just happening to produce a perfect Boeing 747 airplane. These are the sorts of odds we're talking about. What explains this incredible precision? The Bible says that you are a word, not just a random collection of genetic letters, but a word. In fact, it goes further than that. It claims that you're a poem. Uses the Greek word poema, where we get the English word poem from. That word is used in the Bible to describe only 2 things, the natural world and you and me. Are you a random collection of genetic letters, or are you a poem that was carefully and intentionally crafted by God Himself? Are you a sestina? That is the question behind the question of the meaning of life. Origin, morality, meaning. Finally, destiny. Where are we headed? Are we headed anywhere? I stand amid the roar of a surf-tormented shore, and I hold within my hand grains of the golden sand. How few, yet how they creep through my fingers to the deep, while I weep, while I weep. Oh God, can I not grasp them with a tighter clasp? Oh God, can I not save one from the pitiless wave? Is all that we see or seem but a dream within a dream? A dream within a dream. Edgar Allan Poe. What is our destiny? Will our dreams amount to anything? Or will they all just be swept away? What were your expectations for your life as a child? What were they 10 years ago? How about 5 years ago? What are they today? Many people start out with extraordinary dreams for life. But by the time they are adults, they've ceased to dream like children. The harsh disappointments of life gradually chip away and chip away and chip away at childhood idealism until all that's left is adult cynicism. Jesus Christ offers us such a better hope. If the resurrection is true, then what that means for you is that it comes to a point in your life where it seems like there is no hope. If it comes to a point in your life where it seems like even death is inevitable and there's no way to escape it, well, death is not the end. There's more. There's hope no matter what. Those are the words of our dear friend and teammate Nabil Qureshi, who we lost to cancer at the age of 34. Nabil remains confident in those words to his very last breath. Would you have that confidence? Why could he have that confidence? As he put it, because of the resurrection of Jesus. Jesus is alive. Death could not hold him. And therefore there is a promise that it cannot hold us either. Jesus has promised a place where there is no more death or mourning or crying or pain. Why? It says in that verse, because God himself will wipe away our tears. Jesus has promised that he's gone to prepare a place for us in his Father's house, a place with many rooms. Its origin, meaning, morality, destiny. Where did we come from? Where are we headed? What is the purpose of life? And how should we live in light of it? Do we have answers? Or are we just pretending our way through life? Are we from nothing, by nothing, and for nothing, as Quentin Smith put it, the philosopher? Or are we from someone, by someone, and for someone? Is the center of the universe impersonal, or is it personal? Is it random, or is it relational? Christianity offers answers to the deepest questions of life. One more critical question. Can we trust the one who is giving the answers? In our post-truth culture, how can we trust that Jesus is telling us the truth? I want to read you the script from a short video that I came across on Mother's Day. It's a video of two daughters, and they alternate holding up index cards to tell the story of their mother's love. And this is what they wrote. I'm Chloe, and I'm Annie. We want to tell you a story about our mom. Our mom and dad got married in 1991. We lived in a happy home with lots of love and laughter, and a mom who loved us more than the world. But there was an accident in 1999 that changed everything. We were on vacation with our grandparents, and we were going to rent a log cabin. It was beautiful and overlooked a huge cliff. We were so excited. When we pulled into the driveway of the house, my parents and grandparents got out of the car to sign paperwork in the doorway. My sister, brother, and I stayed in the car and watched from the window. Even though my mom had her keys with her, the car somehow knocked out of gear and started rolling towards the cliff. As soon as my mom saw what was happening, she did the unthinkable. She ran in front of the SUV, determined to stop it. We remember the look on her face right before she went under. And we remember feeling the bump as we ran over her body. That bump saved our lives. It slowed the car down just enough for my grandpa to run up beside it and pull the emergency brake right before we went over the cliff. The weight of the SUV on my mother's body should have killed her, but by some miracle of miracles, it didn't. But it did break her back. She is paralyzed from the waist down, and she will never walk again. But she says she wouldn't change it for the world because her 3 kids are alive and with her. She taught us from a young age that when people stare at us because of her wheelchair, we should hold our heads up high and just stare back. Life gave her a tough hand of cards, but she arranged them into something beautiful. Yes, she saved our lives in that accident in 1999, but she saves them over and over again each and every day. Happy Mother's Day, Mom. We love you more than words. So often, I think we forget the rawness of the love of the cross. Chloe and Annie remember the look on their mother's face right before she went under. They remember the bump as the car ran over her body. Do we remember the look on Jesus' face just before he dropped down and gave his life for us? Do we remember the thump of the nails that were pounded into his body? Do we remember when the truth, Jesus himself, was stretched, when the truth was twisted and bent, when the truth was hurt, when the truth was naked, and when the truth was buried? And when people stare at us because we love the truth, will we hold our heads up high? We all need answers to the most fundamental questions of life, and we need them from someone we can trust. The person who can be trusted most is the person who is willing to suffer with you, the person who is willing to give their blood for you, the person who is willing to lay down their life for you. And only one God has given his life for you. Only one God came and sat down beside you, and when he had to choose your life or his, he chose yours. That is a God that we can trust, and that is the God it's my privilege to commend to you this evening.